So everyone writes dry and boring and sciencey books about Bitcoin, block sizes, hashes, all these things. So we have someone in our midst, a South African, a Dr. Nochal, who decided that it's time to write a novel about Bitcoin. So Dr. Nell wrote a book called the Nakamoto Consensus. It's a novel, action-packed thriller with the central theme around Bitcoin. And with that, he's going to tell us more about his book. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good. Welcome to Saturday afternoon in glorious Cape Town. It's such a privilege to be here. This is my first speaking event, but also my first Bitcoin conference, which is pretty special. I'd like to start off just by opening an invitation. And what I'd like to invite you to do is just step sideways outside yourself. Just take a step sideways and sit down next to yourself. Sometimes we need a little bit of space in our heads, and we've got to put that watcher aside. We've got to take our disbelief and let it dangle for a bit, so we can listen to something other than the intellect, and we can listen to something that comes from a little bit of a deeper place, a more knowing place, and a more powerful place sometimes. Don't worry, we'll come back. I'll let you pick yourselves up again at the end of it. But we're going to go on a little bit of a journey. And this adventure is the hero's journey. And for this journey, you're all the hero. Right? And what does that mean? What is it to go on this hero's journey, this most human of all adventures? I'm going to ask you to start off by remembering how it felt, that little shock, the sudden gap, the sudden realization that things may be not quite what you thought they were. There's a space that opens up underneath your feet, and this little tightness that creeps up into the chest, and maybe the throat goes and your mouth goes dry and the jaw tightens up, and we experience a little bit of a lack, a little bit of a gap, some danger. For me, it was one of those experiences was my newborn daughter was sick. Nothing we were doing was helping, and we were told she needed brain surgery at 2 weeks old. So that was that kind of shock. She's great. She's fine. For some people, it's the realization. You look forward and you feel that feeling. The money is not going to stretch. It's getting anemic. It's getting weaker. What's going to happen? The future starts looking a little bit scary, a little bit bleak. We wonder if we're going to make it. It starts grinding at us. Right? That's that same feeling, that same shock. And whether this feeling is slow or fast, sudden or gradual, we've all felt it in some way, shape or form. This sucky, horrible moment is the beginning of the hero's journey. It's the invitation, the call. I'll call it the whole for this talk. Every human has been on this journey many times, some long, some big, some small and short, but this is the proto-map of how we grow, of how we create value, this idea, this arc, that we start with an experience of lack, an experience of gap, and we have to do something to get out of it. We have to respond to that call somehow. We realize that this is the path of being human, imperfect and incomplete, and not perfectible or completable. So this is the context for what I'll be speaking about for the rest of my time, weaving these sort of three things together around the central theme. Bitcoin, obviously, the Nakamoto Consensus, and the value arc that the hero journey offers, and how we see that in Bitcoin, and how I've tried to bring it through in my book and through this talk. The rabbit hole that we talk about, this is a little example in some ways of this sort of hero's journey arc. There's a personal intellectual variation on this. You're walking along minding your own business and suddenly you kind of have a little trip, you stumble. It's like, shit, I don't know that existed. I don't know things were actually like that. And you get drawn into the strange world that doesn't entirely make sense. There's new words, there's terminology, it sounds like a code. People are using the language and they seem to understand each other, but you don't quite know what they mean, and it's a little disorienting, so that can be challenging. But it's intriguing. It starts making some connections, it starts answering questions, explaining things in new ways that kind of make a bit more sense. And they call you to examine that how you thought things were isn't actually how they are. And in Bitcoin, the better you understand it, the more you dig in, the more you get out of it. Right? Not only understanding, holding, and owning the best performing asset in human history, but also the bespoke communities of people that you can mostly get along with, or at least find interesting or challenging. So in some ways, we're kind of compelled to participate in this journey. Yeah. There's the possibility of powerfully changing your life and your future. You're compelled by the need to understand this bucking bronco of an asset, to be comfortable holding it through what they call the face melting volatility. Right, so that's the journey. That's the start of the journey. So we've stumbled, we've fallen into the hole a little maybe, and we realized that we're kind of a little bit less than we thought we were. And this is how I introduced my character, Finn. He's got an okay life, it's a good life. He works, he's got a job, he's kind of satisfied, but he's not complete. There's a gap, there's something missing, and he's sort of chased by his own history. And he shut himself off from the fuller potential of his life. He's starting to suffocate a little bit in that okayness. And into this context, his call to growth arrives in the form of a random encounter with an enigmatic individual, Nakamoto, Satoshi Nakamoto. In his sense, the light bringer, somebody who brings that little bit of spark into his life. So I had a little bit of a dilemma with this part. On the one hand, Satoshi is deeply mythical and mythological and powerful because of that. Right? So who am I to put words into his mouth in my book and make him say things and chat to my character and have conversations? Like, is that okay? Should that be allowed? Should I have given him a voice? I kind of dealt with it by trying to impart what I feel is one of the most powerful things about him, which is, and about Bitcoin, which is this deep integrity, like deep integrity from the base protocol up to what it demands from full participation and how we express it in our lives, and how it sort of starts to weave its magic in many ways as we dig into it. My personal journey, the spark that kind of led to this, started in COVID, that WTAF time, trying to make sense of some of that stuff that was going on, trying to create a little bit of meaning. And the intellect is not always the best thing to do that. You have to marry an intellect with something that is a little bit more knowing than that. Right? So I'm going to share a little something that gives you that idea. No, I am not grist for your mill. I am not a cog to be turned. I am not your second-class citizen, masked around and cowed. I am not the product of your empire fantasies. I am not your eyeballs for hire. I am not the mouth for your slick trash slush. I am not your treadmill jogger. I am not your drugged up, dumbed down, and sanitized body. I am not your arm to be jabbed. I am not yours to command. Don't count me in. I'm opting out. Yeah, so that was some of the COVID stuff. So I managed to keep up that sort of endeavor for about 2.5 years, and being in Bitcoin and following that in a way that felt integrous asked me to do more than just write. I knew that I needed to start to share it and offer it and maybe help people who are struggling, and at least let them know that there was other people going through similar things. And the course of writing poetry over 2 years slowly evolved, and I started to feel like a book might be a more valuable contribution. The second part of that was the book is in honor of my father, who was a wannabe author, and he died in 2012. I still think maybe he was Satoshi, but I've actually looked through his old hard drives to try and find an ancient Bitcoin wallet, like just a couple of thousand, but unfortunately he didn't have any. But he was a poet, anarchist, libertarian, a bit of a hippie. He was also a computer science lecturer and a coder, and we had computers in our lives from the early 1980s, from the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore, and the first laptop that was ever produced, which was a thing the size of a suitcase, the Osborne. I don't know if anyone remembers the Osborne. Yeah. So those two things kind of combined to bring forth this idea, the journey to write a book. So this is kind of how it went. You need to write a book. What? Yeah, write a book. Write a book. Yeah, write a book about Bitcoin. About Bitcoin. Yep. I don't know enough about Bitcoin. I know. I don't know enough about writing. I know. Shit. Write a book about Bitcoin and make it fun. Holy crap. So that was the journey a little bit. So we're going back to our hero's journey. We've fallen into the hole. We've tripped. We've stumbled. If we keep our eyes open and we respond to that call, we start to see a little bit of light. This is kind of our choice. We can lie at the bottom of the hole for a while. We can stomp around and get angry and blame the past and the government and whatever. But at some point, we look up and start to see a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a light. And in Bitcoin, the spark is the promise of something better, something that's transformed. It's wealth, but it's also wealth redefined. It's riches, but it's riches redefined. It's possibility and potential and dreaming that comes into our lives. So I'll share something that may explain that. Through the looking glass, Bitcoin, less rabbit hole, more Warren, more ecosystem, more fractal wonder, microcosm and macrocosm in one delightful tangle. Less rabbit hole, more web, more constellation and firmament, more holistic and holistic, more serious, more humorous. Less army, more tribe, more community, more congregation. Less dictatorship, more totem pole drumming around a technological bonfire, singing hope and promise to the unborn future. So that kind of brings me to, we've fallen in the hole, we got up, we had a look, we start to build our way out of it. The title of my book, The Nakamoto Consensus, refers to the technical mechanism of the network, which is how agreement on the state of the system is reached and maintained. So it's the Byzantine fault-tolerant kind of idea. It's a lovely term, very poetic, that term. but it's how a bunch of distributed, selfish, untrustworthy, competing, conniving, greedy nodes can agree and stay in agreement on the state of the ledger. And this is one of the most beautiful things in Bitcoin. It's using energy and work to create profound, distributed, reliable, and unalterable truth. And why I use it as my title. So in my novel, Finn is pulled into a chaotic, violent, life-altering series of events. And the work and energy that he chooses to invest is what allows the value to emerge, what opens him to new paths and bring the possibility of love into his life. And here we get to the journey part of the hero's journey, the work. Do the work. In Bitcoin, this is encapsulated in that beautiful saying, stay humble and stack sats. We have to do the work. For time immemorial, back down through our biological roots, all the way back to the spark of life itself, there's an imperative. What is hard is valuable. Life itself is a continual battle of reordering energy, parceling out little packets of entropy, structure and order, stacking them against this continuous gnawing of chaos and those little teeth that want to tear things down. Animals signal vitality and fitness, and they do it by showing off their excess capacity, by doing the work, by doing hard things. A peacock's tail, if you saw Tensai this morning, you'll understand the hard work that goes into that. A Lambo, weaver's nest. Life itself seems to find hard things valuable. So stay humble, stack sats. This is the part where you build capital. Capital, the word is weight and energy. You put aside a little bit of that energy and you store it and you save it up in your battery. You scratch out a foothold in the rock wall of your hole with a teaspoon, like the Count of Monte Cristo or the Shawshank Redemption. Seemingly without any reward, you just grind away, and one day you're free. That's the proof of work. So the work is building resilience. In health, I often talk to people about time. Healthcare is this delicate balance between short-term, medium-term, and long-term outcomes. You can't just feel better now at the consequence of 5 years' time, and nor can you put off feeling okay till 10 years down the line. So we have to constantly manage that process. And there's a beautiful little heuristic which I use to guide people, and that is the difference between travesty and sacrifice. Travesty is when we give up something better for something less, for something worse. Right? Sacrifice is when we give up something less to get something better. A life lived through travesty might seem okay for now, but it will always get worse over time. Right? Health, wealth, anything that you care to look at will get worse. And if you choose to sacrifice, it's a pretty reliable way to make life better if you value things in the right way. So do the work, life gets better, the network rolls on, tick-tock, next block. And then what comes after the work? What next? And this is sometimes what we start asking. What next? What comes after we've stacked sats? And there's two little phrases which sum that up for me. The first is, there is no second best asset. And the second one is, first enlightenment, and then the dishes. So we keep going, we keep doing the work, we add value, we bring joy to people's lives, we contribute to each other, and we build fuller and richer lives. Thank you very much.